They thought Mel Gibson would back down. His response left the room in stunned silence. The room was thick with anticipation, a kind of charged silence that only happens before something big unfolds. Rows of journalists sat shoulder to shoulder, their faces illuminated by laptop screens and the glow of camera lights. The faint hum of whispered conversations blended with the clicks of shutters, every person present knowing this was not going to be just another press conference. At the center of it all, Mel Gibson. He had done this 100 times before. He had faced the flashing cameras, the prying questions, the headlines that twisted his words into something they never were. But today, something felt different. And whether he knew it or not, this moment was about to become one of the most talked about interviews of his career. It was the official press conference for Resurrection, the long-awaited follow-up to The Passion of the Christ. The film had already been stirring conversation, a bold, unapologetic portrayal of faith, sacrifice, and redemption. But as Mel took his seat at the long black draped table, it was clear that today's questions wouldn't just be about cinematography or storytelling. No, today's questions would be about something much bigger, about faith, about belief, about whether standing firm in your convictions still had a place in a world that seemed to be shifting faster than ever. The journalist started off with the usual questions. What inspired the film? What was different about this project compared to his past work? Mel answered each one with the ease of a man who had spent decades in Hollywood. He spoke about passion, about artistic vision, about the grueling process of bringing such a story to life. Everything was going smoothly, until it wasn't. From the second row, a reporter leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had been watching, waiting, calculating. And then, with a slight smirk, he spoke. "Mr. Gibson, you've been vocal about your faith for years. Some might say it's stubbornly so, but in today's world, isn't Christianity becoming outdated? With everything happening, progress, inclusivity, don't you think it's time to let go of something that has caused so much conflict throughout history?" The words hung in the air like a challenge, a loaded statement dressed up as a question. The entire room went still. Journalists stopped typing, cameras zoomed in. Everyone was waiting for Mel to get angry, waiting for him to snap back. They had read the headlines before: Mel Gibson loses temper, Mel Gibson in heated exchange, and they were ready to write it again. But Mel, he didn't take the bait. Instead, he simply watched. He let the moment stretch, studying the reporter the way a seasoned fighter sizes up an opponent before throwing the first punch. And then, he smiled. "You know, I've been in this business a long time, long enough to recognize when a question isn't really a question at all." The reporter shifted slightly, his confidence flickering for just a moment. The audience, too, leaned in, because they knew something was coming. "You say Christianity is outdated. Compared to what?" The question was simple, but it cut through the air like a blade. The reporter didn't answer, so Mel continued. "Compared to greed, corruption, the idea that nothing matters unless it serves our immediate gratification? Because that's what modern thinking has turned into, an obsession with self, with tearing things down just because they've been around too long. We like to call it progress, but half the time it's just destruction with better branding." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Some journalists exchanged glances. Others scribbled notes furiously. The cameras kept rolling. "You say Christianity is divisive. I say people are divisive. Always have been, always will be. The world doesn't turn on faith. It turns on people's choices. And people have been using everything, race, politics, religion, to divide each other for centuries. Christianity isn't the problem. People are. And blaming faith for human failure? That's just a lazy way to avoid looking in the mirror." The weight of his words pressed against the room, and then he leaned back. "So, if my faith offends you, that's not really my problem, is it?" The reporter shifted in his seat. This wasn't what he expected. He expected anger, defensiveness, maybe even an argument he could twist into controversy. Instead, he got something far worse: the truth. Outside that press room, the real storm was only beginning. Within minutes, clips of Mel's response flooded social media. Twitter exploded. Some hailed him as a fearless truth-teller. Others called him divisive. News anchors debated his words. Late-night hosts turned them into punchlines. The media machine roared to life. But something else was happening, something the media hadn't expected. People were talking. Not about controversy, but about conviction. In churches, in living rooms, in small-town diners, people were sharing the clip. Parents, Pastors, students, ordinary people who had felt silenced, afraid to speak their beliefs in a world that seemed determined to erase them, were suddenly reminded they weren't alone. Emails flooded in, messages of support, stories of faith. And through it all, Mel never apologized, never softened his words, never backed down. Because here's the thing. At some point, we all face a moment like this. Maybe not in front of cameras, maybe not in a viral firestorm, but in a conversation with friends, in a workplace discussion, in a quiet moment when someone challenges what we believe, not out of curiosity, but to see if we'll bend. And when that moment comes, we have a choice. Do we back down, stay silent, nod along just to keep the peace, or do we stand? Mel Gibson didn't give that answer to win people over. He didn't say it for applause. He said it because it was true. And truth doesn't need permission to be spoken. But truth comes with a price, and the real question is, are we willing to pay it? If this story made you think, if it stirred something in you, don't let it stop here. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button because these conversations, they matter, and they're far from over.